Live from the 13 Now Digital News Desk, this is the Friday Night Fever Afterburn, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning.
Welcome to Friday Night Fever Afterburn. Week 11 is completed. That makes
crazy.
This the final week of the regular season. Now we only have the postseason left. You said crazy. Yeah, the season has flown by. Regular season is over. That means, unfortunately, some of our teams' seasons are over. But we do have a lot of teams that will be making the playoffs. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let's tell us about these first bit of scores here, Kayla.
Well, it was an exciting game over at Freeport tonight. SNEADS kind of runs away with it in the second half. 72-42 is what we have for the final score right now. Then over at Tommy Oliver, MOSLEY hosting the Choctaw Indians. Choctaw pulls away 63-34 is that final. And then keeping it in Panama City, Rutherford visiting Bozeman. Close game with that one. Just a minute left. There's a lot going on there. Bozeman pulls away 36-32. And then South Walton hosting Marianna. They pick up a 17-3 win.
Then heading over to Arnold. Arnold gets a 28-14 win over North Bay Haven. Shipley, a perfect 10-0 heading into the postseason. 35-0 over Dixie County on the road. Northview and Bay, this was an interesting one that we thought was going to be a very close, a very tough battle. Ended up not being very close. I heard a lot of Bay fans saying a very tough game for the Tornadoes, 41-6 in Northview's favor. And then Port St. Joe just absolutely cruising past Florida A&M, 57-12.
And then Liberty County hosting Jefferson County. Jefferson County picks up that win 24-14 over the Bulldogs. Holmes County hosting the Destin Sharks. They get that big win at Memorial 42-3. Weehawken visiting Jay. They pick up that close win 16-10. And Walton with a district match, Union County. Union County picks up that one 31-15.
And the last game, Cottondale and Graceville, 56 in Cottondale's favor, 50-point win in the Hornets. They're going to move on to the playoffs 7-3, so a big win for Cottondale there. Graceville, their season, very young team, that is going to come to a close for them. Let's start with your game, our game of the week. You know, an undefeated SNEADS team with a tough Freeport. Tell us what you saw out there.
Yeah, I mean, in the first couple of drives, it was very back-to-back, but this was the second play of the game. I mean, Jason Patterson, what you expect from him just coming out. This one I think was a 56-yard run. He'll have two more identical to that. Behind me, a coach was saying, you know, this is the third time they've done the same exact play, and we can't get it. So that was a tough part for the Freeport defense. You know, Tracker Thomaston, he was strong. Started hearing his name a lot in the second quarter. But it was pretty neck and neck at the beginning. Couple, you know, missed kicks, extra points, some failed 2-point conversion attempts, some completed 2-point conversion attempts. So points were kind of all over the board, but SNEADS was just able to start kind of slowly pulling away with, I mean, Patterson scoring the first 3 touchdowns of the game. Freeport able to kind of, later on, you'll see a trick play from them. So good coaching. They really put in their all. Wasn't there for the second half, but they pulled away with a big lead in the second half. But, you know, SNEADS looks legit, and was a great attempt by the Freeport team.
Right. One thing that we see here is for the second time this season, SNEADS has put up, you know, some astronomical numbers.
Yeah.
They've also allowed a good bit of points. So that's one thing that we're going to have to watch going to the postseasons. Clearly they can score. Clearly they have, you know, the #1 rusher in the state. But, you know, their defense allowing 42. It is a high-flying offense for Freeport. They like to sling the ball, but 42 points, and we saw at the beginning of the year Arnold putting up a lot of points against them. So that's going to be something moving into the postseason that we're going to have to watch. But got to say, SNEADS, a perfect record heading into the playoffs. Jason Patterson leading the way. Looks like they're going to host.
Impressive. The fact that he's only a junior, so we get a whole nother year of him, hopefully. You know, it's just, that's so exciting. You know, we have playoffs still, but another year is really exciting.
We have a lot of coaches come in the Panhandle, come recruiting. You know, we had Billy Napier here. We had, you know, all kinds of coaches. You think we'll get Nick Saban come down for a visit to try and get Jason Patterson on the roster?
He's impressive. I mean, who wouldn't want him on their team? I mean, this is his junior season, and he's just been stellar. So I can't even imagine if no injuries, if he has a successful, you know, senior season. I think we'll be in the same place, just being amazed by him.
He's a baller for sure. Looking at some of the comments, we got "Let's Go Tigers." A lot of Chipley fans in here tonight. Perfect 10-0. Last time the Tigers were perfect through the regular season, 1988. 10 years before I was born. So yeah, it's been a little while. So 1988, dropping some knowledge on us. Thank you, Mr. Bracken. The Tigers, 10-0. They went to the Final Four last year. They look legit this year.
Two 10-0 teams.
Two 10-0 teams, SNEADS and Chipley. So they'll certainly be hosting for probably a good portion of the playoffs. We'll have to see how those brackets shape out.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little more in a bit, but those brackets will be released on Sunday morning.
I think 11 a.m.
So 11 a.m. Sunday morning, we'll have all the playoff brackets released. Make sure to watch News 13 this weekend, 5:30, 10 p.m. We'll have all of it.
Yeah.
Heading out to Tommy Oliver, Mosley and Choctaw. Mosley, a really tough one against Niceville last week. After going up, they end up falling. This one here, like I said, I looked up and there was 9:53 left on the clock in the first quarter, and it was 14-7. So basically in about 5 plays from scrimmage, it was long touchdowns. We had, the running back over at Choctaw was phenomenal. You got Isaac Paul doing his thing. He's a tough one to beat.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Isaac Paul a little bit. He decommitted from Georgia Southern this week. He was, locked in to go play for the Eagles, but he now is decommitted. He told me this evening, he's open for recruitment, so we'll have to see how that goes. But yes, no defense in this one whatsoever. 14-0 in the first quarter. Second quarter, still pretty much the same thing. Mosley was driving all over Choctaw, but they had too many mistakes. We had a couple turnovers, a couple interceptions from Sammy Freitas. So some really tough plays going against the Dolphins, and they just really could not stop their running back over for the Indians. He was dominant. We do want to talk about this guy.
Yeah.
Free Ross. You were at his game last week and you got the one-hander. This one, the absolute moss. So despite the loss, bring it back a little bit. This one just absolutely fantastic. We could watch this one over and over. He is an athlete. He's only 5'9", and not to call you out, Cree, but that's even a little generous right there. I saw a listing of 5'9". That's a little generous on your part, but you got the hops. I'll say that.
Oh
a big
gosh.
Touchdown. An absolute baller. He's going to have a bright future
And
ahead.
can we rewind to that celebration? That, I think, was my favorite part.
We can just have a whole show talking about Cree Ross, because this kid, he is an absolute phenomenal athlete. It continued on. Too smooth with it. But like I mentioned, this one was all Choctaw in the second half. They just were too much. 63 points on Mosley. And that's really going to make things tough coming into Sunday. Especially after that close loss to Niceville. With the strength of schedule, it certainly gave them a boost with getting that tight loss to Niceville. Now with a kind of beat down to Choctaw, that's really going to be something that I believe that the FHSA takes into consideration. So I don't want to say I'm nervous that Mosley doesn't make it, but also this, is a type of loss that could really push them down a good bit. So I think they're going to be one of the teams that are really paying attention.
Which is something you hate to see. I mean, they have so much talent on this team, and it's hard to see these past couple weeks just not going in their favor. These tight games, these second halves that they just kind of lose their gripping on, and it's just sad to see. So.
And I see what was Choctaw's record before the night? They're 4-5, so they're
and
now
Mosley was 5-4.
5-5. Both teams ended up 5-5. But I will say Choctaw, they played Niceville. They play all of those teams over there on that side that are very, very high quality teams in the Pensacola and Okaloosa County area. There's some very close ones. They almost beat Niceville, same way that Mosley did. So that record, a 4-5, kind of similar to, if anybody remembers Gadsden County last year, kind of a similar record. But coming into the playoffs, everybody knew they're a lot better than their record showed. And I'm sure Choctaw is going to get all the consideration moving into the playoffs. They're going to be a scary one because they're probably going to be seated lower than a lot of these teams, and they're probably going to sneak up on them. So, yeah, Choctaw 5-5, Mosley 5-5. That's going to be, interesting as we head into Selection Sunday. So, one team that did lock it up, Bozeman. Bozeman did lock themselves a spot in the playoffs. A lot of our teams are getting in the playoffs. Basically 6 from each region. Unless you just really had a really tough year there's a good chance you're making the playoffs in
Yeah.
1 hour. Bozeman, they did get it tonight. That one was a phenomenal ball game.
Close
as far as just
one.
entertainment value goes, and there's, Kendall
The
right
color.
there coming out on the field. Would love to see her out there with the Bucks. This one, a lot of fun, a lot of color. What did you think tonight with Bozeman getting the close win over Rutherford?
I don't know why. You kind of told me last year Rutherford did pull off the win last season. I just kind of had a feeling that Rutherford would really hang on in this one. Wasn't sure if they'd pick up the win, but I just had a feeling, this was going to be their last time hitting the field. They wanted to prove it. They would just, what they have to lose kind of mentality. And I think they really, it was just nice to see them put up such a fight. And that's something I've said before is Rutherford, no matter what, they will go put their all into every game. So it was just nice to see them able to execute and kind of just get something from it tonight. So, and Bozeman's kind of fallen to injuries this season, but, a good home win for Bozeman as well. But impressive by Rutherford to, put up some points and make it a ball game tonight.
Right, and regardless of how the season ends, Rutherford, they're not going to be in the postseason, but this is one of those games. Obviously, a Bay County matchup that there's a lot of pride on the line. Coach Tillman is a former Bozeman coach, so there's just a lot of pride between these two schools, and it came down to the end. Rutherford was leading, and then Bozeman scored in the final minute. Courtney was saying that it came down to the last play. Rutherford almost scored at the end of the game, but it came just short. But yes, Bozeman 36-32 over Rutherford. We'll have to see where the Bucks wind up heading into the playoffs. Marianna and South Walton. This is another team in South Walton. Marianna, not so much kind of on the outside looking in. South Walton, a big bubble matchup. They're going to be one that's really interesting when it comes to selection and see kind of if they get that nod heading in, because they had some tough losses and then a couple of beatdowns in the last couple of weeks. What do you think of South Walton as they head into the postseason time?
Well, every time I think about South Walton, I just think about them being this offensive powerhouse, but they continue to prove me wrong on the defensive side of the ball. They have a really strong defense. Marianna, they've had some tough games this season, but, Coach Glover said that this is one of the strongest defenses he's ever had. So, very low scoring game, lots of turnovers, some mistakes, but just a very powerful defense from South Walton. So, they were able to kind of scoot ahead, but, it's just impressive they just surprise me every week kind of with that strong defense, because I always just kind of go back to the big offense, even though they can really hold it on both sides of the ball.
I will say South Walton, this is not the team that they had last year, but they definitely have some pieces. Last year, they were a juggernaut. They were a one loss heading into the playoffs. They had a bye heading into the playoffs. There's no doubt whatsoever. One thing that, certainly, like we were saying, is a factor for them is missing Pierce Sperlin all year long. Coming back tonight, they said he had a big game last week. They said he was kind of limited in action this week, so we'll have to see.
Which doesn't surprise me.
Right. He's the Georgia commit. He's got a bright future ahead. Trying
All-American game ahead.
All-American. He's got it all, regardless of how, if this was his last game or if he's got another head into the playoffs, Pierce clearly has a bright future ahead. So we'll have to see on that one.
Yeah.
Heading into Sunday, because South Walton, that's going to be one that's going to be, a toss-up. I haven't seen all the numbers. If they're already a lock, go ahead and comment if you know. But as far as I'm concerned, they're one of those bubble teams. Arnold and North Bay Haven, two Bay County teams that, this is another pride game. Not a whole lot of playoff implication in this one. What did you think tonight from out at Gavlike Stadium?
Well, Grace said, she was out there, she said it was a very slow start in the beginning. I think a couple short plays like this one just ahead of the end zone. North Bay Haven was able to get it done at the beginning of the second quarter. Didn't get that one on video, unfortunately. And then, Arnold having a couple close calls, getting right ahead of the end zone, getting some plays called back. So, I think it was definitely a slow game over there, but both teams kind of wanting to finish out that regular season with a win. Arnold winning senior night. They have some top players. It was all Lucas Champagne and Seth Hernandez tonight for Arnold, it looks like, from the highlights that we see. So good to see them out there, that kind of dynamic duo. So, like you said, just kind of putting it out there, pride match for probably the last games.
Right, 28-14, the final up there from Arnold. Like we mentioned, a lot of seniors that the Marlins will have to replace next year.
Yeah.
I will say for North Bay Haven, they do have a ton of young talent on the team. Lakota Johnson, Quante Spencer. Those are some guys that you're going to hear their names for the next couple of years, and you're going to hear them often because, they are incredibly talented. Lakota, already one of the best baseball players in the area, and he has only played his freshman season, so we'll have to see what he does in the spring. But
Love a
bright
dual threat
future
athlete.
exactly. Got a lot of those athletes around here. But North Bay Haven falls here 28-14 in Arnold's favor. We don't have those Chipley highlights, but we've already talked a little bit about them. Last perfect season since 1988,
Yeah.
35-0 over Dixie County. So they certainly going to have some momentum and probably an extra week off. I'm sure they'll get a bye heading into the playoffs. Again, Northview 41-6 over Bay. Port St. Joe 57-12. We do have some of the highlights from the Port St. Joe game. What do you think of them closing out the season with a win?
Well, I was at the Port St. Joe game last week, and one of the things I wanted was to see DJ Oliver in action, and he had a couple runs, but that Bluntstown defense was all over him. So it's a little bittersweet seeing this big run. It's good to see him kind of putting up these plays, but I wanted to see them in person. So good job for them. This is another team with lots of talent, lots of seniors as well, but they're a good team. So that kind of putting up that score on the kind of struggling A&M this season didn't surprise me at all. I'm definitely excited to see what they can do in the playoffs, who they're going to be matched up against, because I think this team has a ton of potential, and I kind of want to see how it translates into the playoffs.
Right. Another team that I think could possibly, have that first round bye. We'll have to see how it all shapes out on Sunday, but I could easily see, a SNEADS, a Chipley, a Port St. Joe, maybe a Bluntstown, heading with a first round bye. They had the week off this week, heading into the playoffs, but 57-12 in Port St. Joe's favor. Looking at some of the comments, yes, we did. We have not talked about this yet, but Liberty County, we want to congratulate the Liberty County volleyball team.
Yeah.
We're going to have a full recap this weekend, so if you want to see the action of that
Lots
game,
of sports
we got the highlights.
weekend.
Right, a lot of sports going on this weekend. Make sure to watch. 10 o'clock tomorrow, we won't have an early show because the Florida State game will be on ABC, but we will have a 10 o'clock show tomorrow, Saturday, and then we'll have a 5:30 p.m. and a 10 o'clock show on Sunday, so make sure to watch those. We'll have a lot of action. Liberty County, the volleyball team, advancing to the state title game. I watched much of it online before going to the football game tonight. They went down in the first set. It looked kind of scary. Then they completely dominated from that point on. If you were not at the game, they just completely crushed it. This was their first Final Four match since 2012. That same year, they went and they're state runners-up. So this is their first time in 10 years going to the state final. They'll play in Winter Haven. I believe that's an 11 a.m. game, and they're going to play Baker. So Baker is now, the state championship is staying in the Panhandle for yet another year, staying in the Panhandle. Baker's a little further west than our region, but it's going to be an 11 a.m. game against Baker and Winter Haven on Friday. So that's next week when we got football once again. We'll be talking about this. Hopefully at this point next week, we'll be saying, hey, state champions, Liberty County. We'll keep you tuned in for sure. But yes, a lot of games tonight. Walton, Union County. Again, this is normally the time where we start saying, hey, these are the games next week. We don't know the games next week. We don't know which teams are going to be in. But just looking at the board right now, and from what I know of the standings, I would say Liberty County will get in. Wewell Hitchcoat will get in. Holmes County will get in. Walton, a bubble team, but I think that they
Tough
will get in.
district
They
schedule.
should definitely, I think they'll get the nod, but they've had some tough losses within their district. Chipley, obviously, they're going to be in. Bay is going to get in, but now borderline, will they host? Last week, we knew for sure they are probably going to host because they're a district champion. That's going to give them some help because they give the nod to district champions. I believe Bay will host. Possibly get a first round bye, but a loss like this could really damage them up a bit. Obviously,
Yeah.
Northview, a good team, and the best of luck to any of our 1R schools.
Yeah.
Chipley, SNEADS, Port St. Joe, Bluntstown, Holmes County, any of those schools that get the matchup with Northview, that's going to be tough because they've put a beat down now on Bluntstown and Bay, two of our better teams in the area. They're scary.
They're scary, yeah.
They're very scary.
I want to see them in action, but I'm terrified too.
Right. We did get the highlights from the Bluntstown game earlier in the season, but I mean, yeah, they are legit. SNEADS is going to be in. They're going to have a first round bye. They will host. Freeport will be in. Again, we said MOSLEY, a CHOCTAW, probably both going to be in, but, borderline there, especially MOSLEY with this loss. Bozeman will be in. Rutherford will not be in. Marianna will not be in. South Walton, a bubble team.
Blountstown on a bye this week.
Blountstown is a bye. They'll be in for sure. Franklin County was also on a bye. They will not be in. And then other than that, the only other teams, again, North Bay Haven, Arnold, not in. Chipley will be in with a bye. Bay, we already said Bay. Port St. Joe will be in. All of these teams we just mentioned will be in. And then again, Liberty County, Holmes County, Weo, Hitchcock, Walton, probably all in as well. So we'll have to see the placement. We'll have to see how it all works out coming into Sunday. What do you think last week of the regular season? What are your thoughts as we head into the postseason? Any bold predictions, anything that you want to throw out there before we head into the playoffs next week?
Well, I'm excited for the playoffs. I think it's going to be a new kind of level of high school football that, everything's on the line. It's not just a regular season game, but I am sad the regular season's ending because I love football. I love the fall. So it's sad that an era of high school football is ending, but the playoffs are exciting. I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see a lot of these teams. I think it's going to be hard seeing, Port St. Joe has really kind of proved themselves this season. Blountstown getting that big win over Port St. Joe last weekend. Chipley 10-0. They look great, every time I've seen them. SNEADS, I mean, that game tonight, Jason Patterson looked amazing. So it's going to be hard to kind of see when these teams, fall out. I wish they could all win, but that's not sports.
It is wishful thinking.
It is, but I'm just excited. I think it'll be interesting to see how the brackets come out. These bubble teams that we're not sure of where they're going to be. So I'm kind of just anticipating what the brackets are going to look like, and then teams will fall. There's going to be upsets. There's going to be great wins. So playoffs. I feel like it's going to get crazy.
I completely agree. And I see down here, Northview and Chipley, both undefeated and district in the region. Who gets the 1 seed? Does it go to strength of schedule? And then I also see, we don't know the FHSA formula. I don't think anybody knows it. I don't think the FHSA knows their formula. That's just my opinion, but we'll throw that out. Maybe cut that part out. Don't think we can do that. But anyway, Northview and Chipley. In the last rankings, Chipley was the 4, and I believe Northview was the 5. After a big win like that over Bay, you got to believe that Northview takes a bump up in the rankings this week. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But yes, those two certainly, I would think, both get a bye heading into the playoffs. Chipley's a 1 as of now. You got Go Bozeman. Yes, the Bucks will be in the playoffs next week. Yes, the formula is interesting. So Northview, like I see, don't know if Northview loses. They have dominated everybody.
Yeah.
Last year was Madison County. Madison County is not the same this year, but that was a team that we looked at and we were like, wow, like this team is going to run the table, and they ran the table. They absolutely just balled out on Blountstown, a team that was incredible, North Florida League champions. They just made their way through the playoffs. That was Madison County's year. This year it might be Northview. We clearly don't want to count out any of our schools. I definitely think that Chipley, SNEADS, Blountstown, Port St. Joe, I think a lot of these teams could definitely match up against them. But yeah, Northview, they look to be a beast. I haven't seen those teams down south, the Hawthorns and, all those teams that always have incredible groups over in the Big Bend area. So we'll have to see what they bring to the table. But it's going to be fun. Yeah. The regular season's over. We're heading to the playoffs.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Well, before we go, anything else that you got from this week? Any teams that you think do you want to claim a dark horse? I know I already claimed my dark horse. Do you want to claim a dark horse, or you want to leave that bad juju out of the air?
No, I'll leave it out.
Probably smart.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us. If you want to go see the highlights of these games from tonight, head over to mypanhandle.com. Click on the sports tab. Follow News 13 this weekend. We will tell you the brackets on Sunday. Make sure to watch that. We will also post them online. That's on mypanhandle.com as well. That's going to do it for us. The regular season is over. We'll see you next week in the playoffs.